Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Kate Schwarting, our Gallery North moderator for today. I want to welcome you all to our second edition of our virtual artist encounters. Today, we will be featuring artist Schery Markee Sullivan. She will be giving us a tour of her studio, and following that and talking about some of her work. After that, she'll be giving us a chance to ask her questions and have a Q&A. Before we begin, I'd just like to talk a little bit about our platform that we're using, Zoom. Everyone will have a chance to ask questions towards the end. You can ask them using the little message feature in the on the bottom of your screen. You can also raise your hand under the More feature, and we'll get to most of them after Schery's done going through things. With a number of people attending an event like this, I have to keep everyone on mute until you ask a question. But when you raise your hand, I'll unmute you and you'll be able to talk to Schery, and we'll have a little discussion. So let me find Schery. Can you hear me, Schery? Let's see, I think she might have dropped off. Where are you?
I might.
Okay, there we
now,
are.
Okay, hi.
The one other thing I have to mention is that we've had a few issues with the sound going in and out, and that's unfortunately part of this technology. Is that we're all kind of have to go with the way Wi-Fi goes, but let's hope we don't have too many interruptions today. All right, Schery, would you like to talk about your work? We've had Schery's work in our gallery at Gallery North last year. She had a solo exhibition.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to my studio in Wantagh, Long Island. I'm an extended member of Gallery North family. I've done a number of shows with them, including the work of women and figure shows. I've done the Deck the Hall shows, and I've done a Winner's Circle show from an outdoor show, and I did the solo show last year in March. I was brought on board to Gallery North through Judith Levy. We studied with the same painter, Robert Capellas, at NYU. So thank you so much for having me here. If I had to categorize myself, I would say I was an abstract artist, but I like to leave that very open-ended and fluid, that category. I don't really want to pin myself down too tight. My medium is basically water-based. I work in watercolor, ink, gouache, colored pencil, acrylic, which I like the flow of the acrylic in with the water when it makes a nice translucent base, and working with a palette or other tools and implements. I work a heavy body acrylic on the canvas. I also work with water-based oils, which have a different drying time than the acrylics have. So you have to be careful if you're putting them both down on the same canvas, that if you want to blend something or work something, you have to know what the timing is for the drying. So that's about it. I'd like to take you for a tour around the studio, and it'll be a quick tour because it's a small studio. But I'll start on this wall, and you can see there are some smaller works and some wire sculptures and a worry doll sculpture and some inspirational things there. I have a lot of racks that are around the studio, and clients or galleries come in and they sift through the racks, and they can take things out and lay them out on the floor or a chair and talk about it or discuss it and think if they want to take it for a ride or something. This table has a lot of my supplies, markers and pens and pencils, scissors and rulers and matte knives, glues, finishes, gessos, brushes, inks, colored pencils, a lot of nice supplies there. You can see every inch of space is used because it's such a small space. And down on the bottom, I have heavier tools that I work the canvases with, and wire and metal, and there's tacks and nails, cloth and ribbon and cord, and everything that I can use in collages and the found and lost and found sculptures that I do. There are some paints on the floor, and these are buckets of the metals that I collect or have been given to me. This is my sink, and these are my brushes, and I'm so grateful, I can't even say, for running water, because a water-based artist could not work without water. Over here is another cart full of supplies. And then I come to some larger bins, and these sleeves can hold larger pieces, like 26 by 40 pieces. And then I come to a taller wall, nice tall walls here, where I can put this. It's about 5 feet high, this piece. So, and if you see, I'll come up close and you can see it's a piece of canvas that's been painted and tacked onto a board. And then some of the lost and found pieces, like this is a spring mechanism for a door, has been attached right down the center of her torso. And found caps and washers have been tacked into her headdress around the figure's head. This is a worry doll piece, and it's a good sample of the collage work that I do. It's wired on, glued, and then wired on. On the bottom here, you can see where I keep a lot of the rolled up canvases. I always have a roll of canvas that I can lay out on the floor, and I cut it to the size I need, and then I just begin to work. Here's another bin of medium-sized work that has a lot of different parts of the series, different series that I do paint. Here's a larger wall, so this canvas is about 50 inches by 38 inches or so, and it's from the Winter Dragon series, because there's a sense of the tundra or Arctic painted on the canvas, and then that powerful color coming up from underneath. This is another bookcase of records and files and reference materials, another double rack of work and prints. And then the back wall doesn't have any windows, so I'm able to put large pieces on the wall in the back. And this piece that's in front of you is 65 inches by 54 inches, so it is large, very, wanted a feeling that very dynamic and full of energy and light and life and a joy there. And the mask piece on the bottom. And I'm coming over to a worry doll sculpture that is done on a cigar box. I remember last week Doug had mentioned that he works painting on cigar boxes, and I collect them and I make them into sculptures. And there's a wood underneath, and I don't know if you can see, but she has wire wings to her. And then I have another fairly large 4-foot by 3-foot piece of Dragon's Cave, that's called. And then night writing, it's 4 feet by 4 feet on the bottom there. Here's a lost and found metal sculpture that I just finished in honor of the people that have been lost and alone in these past couple of weeks and months that we've been experiencing. And down on the bottom, there's a mother and child piece. and a large worry doll piece that's I'm reworking, and this is a piece I'm working on now. It's very colorful, but I've added a lot of dark contrast to the colors, a lot of black in the background, and another bookcase of supplies and a final rack. This is the table that I work on, any flat work that I have to do that I do not want to drip, anything that I don't want to run. So this is a big table that I work on. And if you come and you look at the floor, when the studio was first finished, I epoxied the floor with a white paint and it opened it up. It was a beautiful reflection. And I wrote a poem across the whole studio floor. If you can see in this section, I just rolled up the rug a little bit, and you can see how much cleaner it is than the place where I work now, my canvases and any watercolors that I want to work in a different way, a less controlled way. It's done in the style, the writing is done in the style of sgraffiti, which is a script and a scribble and a tagging of my poetry, like in a sense of graffiti, but it's a tagging of the words of the poem down. And I put that in a lot of paintings that I do. It may be the first thing I put down, and then I paint over it, and some of the letters or words come through, or I put it down on a wet surface, and then it comes through after, and it's left there to bleed or to blend on the paper. So, and I also have a sitting area for clients to just stay and sit and enjoy the work or talk about the work. And then I have an attic up here. I'm not going to pull it down right now, but it's it's good storage space for other supplies and things. So that's about it as far as the studio goes. And now maybe if Kate can help me out with a slideshow, I can talk about some of the series that I work on. I have about probably 12 different series that I have, and I think I'm going to talk about 5 of them. So if we, it's called the Brooklyn series.
Okay, pulling those up right now.
And if Kate does the slideshow, I will read the artist. There is a formal statement to this that I began when, that I wrote when I began the series. There are 16 pieces altogether in the series. It's ongoing, and that means it's open. I have not finished the series. It's still coming through. And they're all 22 by 22. I made them all uniform, and they're all on paper. So this series is a homage to the energy, diversity, and vibe that defines Brooklyn in all of its culture, crowds, and color. The vibrancy and vitality pulse from all of its many unique neighborhoods like Coney Island, Park Slope, Williamsburg, Fort Greene, Red Hook, or Sunset Park, to name a few. Each one so alive and rich in its history, architecture, and the settled or fluid nature of the population that live and work there. It seems that anywhere you go in the world, everyone has heard of Brooklyn. And that's the last piece. So the first piece I want to talk about is number 1 in the series, and it's called In Brooklyn. It was done, I started with a wash of ultramarine blue, and then I covered that while that was wet with a charcoal gray and a Payne's gray, and then blotted it out, wetted it more, so that when I put down the first beginning splotches of color and splashes of color, they bled a little bit and blended into the grays and the blues behind it. And I put down some of the black ink first so that it would blossom out and the lines would be very thick. But as the paper dried, I was able to get a finer line in that graffiti style that I was talking about before. And when the paper was completely dry, I put the uh, controlled rim of color on the edges. So the next piece I wanted to talk about is called Been Dancin' in Brooklyn. And that, you see there's a much more open background to that, a backscape to that. And the color was put down, but then I brought in just two basic color tones, hues of orange and grays. And there's an indication of a figure line in here, and I wanted to retain that feeling of urgency, but also the feeling of a jumpy, springy quality in the figure. And I hoped it to be very airy and breathing. In the third piece that I wanted to speak about is called
Sherry, hang on one second. You're down.
Daybreak's Brooklyn.
There you go. There we go.
Okay, it's called Daybreak's Brooklyn. That's it. That's number 15 in the series. And there's still a lot of open space on the top. I left that. I painted, of course, maybe the white and the flesh and the soft greens, and then muted it all. But on the bottom, I wanted to bring in a feeling of the dawn and a sunrise, the color of a rusty and an amber and an orange coming out of that nighttime that's on the left-hand side. And if you've ever walked down a street in Brooklyn in the early morning, can be a very, very quiet and beautiful, peaceful place, as opposed to the afternoon or the evening when the bars and the restaurants and the traffic is going and the people are all out and all the shops are open. So that's the number 15. And then number 16 is called A Cello. Cello Plays Brooklyn. And that, I was just walking down the street and heard this cello coming from a window, and it had such a wonderful upbeat notes, very allegro and joyful and springy, and I wanted that red and the blues and the yellows to just vibrate off the page. So I wanted it to be more of a soundscape than a landscape. I wanted that chaotic convergence of joy and a dance of musical notes on the page. So that's all I picked from the Brooklyn series. Now the next series is Mother and Child. And that is, I can read the statement to that. If you like, if Kate can go to
getting that one.
Yes, there we are. And she'll do a slideshow and I can read the statement. So every one of us was born of another human being. Every one of us is a child. The bond that is formed between a mother and child
Sherry, I think we lost you for a second.
child, and then a mother. I know it to be fierce, powerful, warrior-like, full of yearning, filled with wonder, tenderness, joy, and grief, and every possible force that a life can bear. And doesn't every child in us search for that one harbor, that haven, that place, a sanctuary where safety is a given and love is no question? It is the sea of light. So there's probably well over 100 pieces I've painted of this series, and I'm going to pick 3 of the ones that I chose to show you in the gallery here. So the first one is called Beg the Moon. So in the slideshow, that's number 6, Kate.
Okay, sorry.
Number 6, that's fine. So when she pulls it up, okay, so here we go. So yes, in the foreground, there's a mother figure, and her hands are together in prayer. And she's praying for protection, for an intercession of protection to a more powerful god or goddess to keep her child safe from harm. And that's what mothers do all of their lives, no matter how old their children are. And the figure in the back is a powerful, you see there's a big presence back there, and it feels like that presence is enveloping the mother and the child. And she's hoping that that intercession that she's begging for is going to keep her child safe. In the second piece, it's called, I'm sorry, I want to go back to that first piece one more time. I'm sorry, Kate. In the upper right-hand corner, you can see some of that graffiti that I was talking about. That's graffiti, where there's a poem that I wrote for the series, and it's written up there. Part of the poem is written up there in that style of the ink. Yes, she has the cursor on that, those words up there. So, and the poem is not meant to be literally put down and read, but certain words of it are kept. So there are snatches of it and pieces of it that are apparent. So the second piece is called In the Arms of Love. And yes, this palette was inspired by a trip to Italy and the Mediterranean colors. A lot of the statues and paintings of Italy are done in these beautiful blues, ultramarines, turquoise, greens, the verdant greens, ambers, lots of gold and copper in the statues. So this was inspired by that, this palette. And you can see that the child is very safely wrapped and encompassed by the mother's arms, and the baby's reaching up for her face. But he's very content and happy to be there. In the third piece, the third and last piece I want to talk about this series, I chose this one because it's a nice example of the collage work that I do, and bits and pieces of painted or printed paper are glued or attached around the figure here, and there is a sense of a cloak of love that's enveloping the mother and the child. And if you look at the child's face a little closer, you can see he's very sleepy and happy to be in the mother's arms, and she's very much in love with her child. So that's the some of the Mother and Child series. And then I will go to series. So that I started with, okay, she pulled it up for me. So there's no formal statement to that, but this is a very large piece. It's Bones of Orange. This is the title. And then Orange, which with scratches scratched through. This is called Teller Avenue. This is called Upstream City.
Hang on, Sherry. I think you're breaking up a little bit. Can you still hear me? We can't hear you. Hi, everyone. Sorry. Thank you for your patience. This should come back momentarily.
This is acrylic on paper. Can you?
Try it again.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, here we are. Okay, now you're on class dismissed. And then the next one is, can you still hear me, Kate? Okay,
Yes.
That's one on Lover. This is Dragon Approaches. And Night Riding. This is the Writing on the Wall. And the last one that I chose to represent this series is Dragon's Cave. So if we go back, the first one is Class Dismissed. And okay, so we'll go back
So this one?
to, yes, that's it. That's correct. Okay, so there are blotches, or so then I put the white paint, I highlighted over the color forms a white paint that I felt it brought out the color underneath. Okay, it's called Dragon Approaches, and there's a feeling of, this is me for Dragon at the Door, color on paper, a lot of like space, what an interest in of that color, and coming in a power that, and a presence that was arriving, so to speak, into this wilderness. So that's the second piece. The third piece is Night Writing, yes, and that's structurally very different. It's squares within a square within a square. And it's the inside squares are very ordered and blocky, and then there's a square around that, and on the outside you can see the scratching coming into the painting. So I started with a black and an ultramarine color all around. I wanted to have a feeling of the night universe, and that ordered, like the stars are all aligning, but then there's that chaos underneath and coming in from the side, that you know that there's that life and death that's always going on in that night universe. And then the last one I wanted to talk about here was Teller Avenue. I was born in the Bronx and had a very free and wild childhood. So this piece came out of that background, and there's figure pieces that are playing and running in there, line work, and it's on top of very playful and lots of colors and lots of splashes and splotches and throwing the paint and dripping the paint, and then that line work that's on top of it. So that's it for the abstract series. The last series is, first one is Woman Streaming Blue. The second one is Gathering Summer. The third one is The Conversation. The fourth one is The Procession. The fifth one is Figure with Wire Wings. 6 is Orange Haired
Okay.
Goddess with Fish. The next one is the Blue-Footed Dancer in the Dark Day. So I wanted to talk about it, just a couple of the, this is Dancers 2, it's called. That's a collage. So I included the Worry Doll series in this abstract figure series, and the Worry Dolls are come from a part of a folklore legend from Guatemala, in this case, with if you take a worry doll and you tell them your worry, and then you put that worry doll under your pillow at night, it supposedly should take away your worries. So, but in the first piece I want to talk about, which is the Procession. If you can, yes, the Procession. Okay, this is a line of figures that are in a funeral procession. And the figures are supporting, if you see the first figure in the front, she feels like she's falling. And the second figure has her arms around that figure, and she's giving her that comfort and support. And all the way down the line, there's a sense of a wailing and grief and calling out to the powers that be and the heavens above, like, why did this happen? What happened? And why did this have to happen? And there's, I put a lot of copper leaf in the background, and it's a very noisy, distressed sound back there of the crying and the wailing. Um, and this piece kind of accentuates what's happening these days. We don't have that surrounding support of able to be in a community mourning with each other. We have to mourn alone, so to speak. And at least this woman in the front, this person who lost so profoundly, has the comfort of her loved ones and friends around her. So the second piece I wanted to talk about is the orange-haired girl, and it's a very different quality and happiness that she has. She's very content, kind of speaks for itself. She's just sitting in a chair, enjoying, thinking. Her eyes are a little bit in the thoughtful distance, and she's enjoying her bouquet of flowers. And the next piece of the ones I want to talk about is Goddess with Fish. And that is, I spoke a little bit about that before, that's hanging in the studio. It's a canvas, and in this piece, her head is sort of surrounded by that smoke and fire element, and around the metal in her headdress, she's a very powerful, solid figure. She has a lot of presence about her. And then down on the bottom around her, there's that greenish and the gray and a watery feeling. And she has a symbol, to me, a symbol of life in her hand, of fish, which is life for us, a very different universe from the one that we walk in. So that's about it. That has the metal elements that are attached to it. And then the last piece is the piece that I'm working on now, and that is from the Worry Doll series. It's a reworked piece, and I added 5 or 6 figures to it. There were 3 figures, and they were rather benign, but now as the piece is developing, I added a lot of the black and the very dark blue background, and I added that sense of sorrow and chaos and confusion and grief and sort of like, what's going on here? We don't know what the situation is and what do we have to do. And the figures are grasping and reaching and feeling a little bit lost in their power, with their power. So the last series that I wanted to present today is the abstract landscape, and that is the 4 pieces.
Bring that up.
Yeah, bring that up. There's just 4 pieces I picked from that. So in this series, though, when you see it, there's a lot of recognizable, much more recognizable elements to the pieces. When Kate brings it up, I don't know what order she's going to bring it up in, so
Yeah, just
this is all very spontaneous here, so sorry about all the redundancy and all of the technical glitches. So this is a brave new world. Okay, here are the pieces. So the first one is called Force-Shaped Trees. And it's basically what it says, and they're sort of recognizable as trees, but there's more of a landscape feeling to that, different sections. This is Dove Cove, and you can almost see that harbor. This is, yeah, that harbor and the land and the boats. This is Distant Trees, and there's a lot of reds and golds. It was done in the autumn, and there's a gold leaf on top of the bits and pieces of the landscape. This is Market Street Dock, and this is a much more urban landscape of a pier that may be downtown. So that's it as far as the series go today. So I guess I could just turn it back over to Kate
Yeah,
for,
we're going to
okay.
open it up now to questions. If anyone has a question for Schery, you can just make a comment in the comment box and I'll unmute you. Or you can also use the little raise your hand feature. Okay, I've got one here from Nancy.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you for letting us into your studio. I love your work and it's great to see it all together like this. Thank you so much. I was just
Thank you.
You talked about reworking this piece that you're working on now.
Yes.
How often do you do that? How are most of your pieces like sort of, are many of them living pieces that you go back to, or
No, most of them are not. This particular piece, I was never quite fully satisfied with. I felt that it was too monochromatic. I don't have a shot of it how it was before, but this is the third time, and I believe it will be the final time that I rework it, because it came from a truer place for me this time. The basic painting is still there, but as I said, I added the consciousness of what I'm feeling right now, and it became much more relevant to me. The other piece was much more benign. That's the only thing I can say. It didn't have as much feeling or meaning to it as this piece does.
Thank you.
All right, great. Next person we have is Barbara Jordan. Let me unmute you. Hi, Barbara, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I'm not sure if I'm on camera. Not sure if this thing I'm on right now has a camera. So anyway, hi Schery, it's Barbara.
Hi, Barbara.
You know I enjoy all of your work, and it was good to see the various series that you work on. And I had a question as to whether you stay within a series kind of sequentially, or whether you jump around from one to another series in your work.
Yes. Okay. I work on a lot of series at once, but if something is drawing me into a particular series, like my son had a child, my son and daughter-in-law had a child last year, and that brought out a lot of the feelings again of that mother and child series. So that's an impetus or something, a catalyst to make it, draws me back into the series. As I said, the Brooklyn series is an ongoing series, so that if something strikes me there and it's a very impulsive thing to do, then it takes a while to process what I'm feeling, because I don't really, it's more of a mental photograph than an actual photograph that I work from. So it takes a while to process what I'm feeling and what I'm seeing, and then it comes through. But it's the series are for the most part ongoing. The only one, they really aren't in consecutive order. So if that's kind of what you mean, but I go back to them all the time, unless they're completely finished. Like I did a crane series, and that I did work from photographs, and that pretty much, it ran itself out for me creatively. So that one is finished.
Well, I love them all, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Right, and
with me.
the next question we have is from Janie. I'm going to unmute.
Hi, Schery.
Hi, Janie.
Your stuff is so beautiful. Every time I see it, it just looks more and more beautiful. But I had a question. I mean, you showed us the metal sculpture you did in honor of those who died recently, and I guess you changed the Worry Doll painting.
Yeah.
How has the virus affected you as an artist? Not necessarily as a person, because all of us can talk about the grocery store lines, but have you thought of new themes, or have you processed it? how, will there be changes, do you think, in the way, I mean, many of your paintings are grouped many people. Talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so this feeling that I'm having is that feeling of despair and darkness. And I had the same feeling in slightly different parameters, but the same feeling after 9/11. And what happened was my color palette changed.
Wow.
And a lot of the layering of the paint, actually, I started to layer the paint down on paper and get a much more dark feeling and intensity in the work. And that same feeling is happening now. And as a matter of fact, I was working on the metal sculpture. My daughter-in-law's grandmother passed away in a nursing home, and she was all alone, all by herself. So at the last, when I finished the sculpture, I'll put the camera back on that sculpture. I added those tears that are coming down from her face, and you can see that chain that's around, that chain of sorrow that's around her figure, her body. So that's all that processing. It does take a long time to come through. And in the downtown series, which happened after 9/11, that series went from 2001 until about 2008 or 9. There were 3 sections to it. When it first happened, then the underground part when people were starting to recover. And then the 3rd section of that series was the spring, I called it, where people were really beginning to come to life again. But of course, the people, and again, with the same thing now with the virus, people are either affected by it or know people that are directly affected by it. So there's nobody that has probably not been affected by it unless you live on Mars or something. So that it takes a long time, and I don't know how long this is going to come through, but it'll come through. An artist just has to keep that membrane, very thin membrane, between the outside world and the inside world, that interior landscape that you work from, that I work from as an artist. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. How about the florals, though? Did you disregard the florals because of the vibe? I mean, I was waiting for the florals. Now, are you not doing the florals because of the virus?
Yeah, I didn't really consider them. They are very joyful. I don't have too many sad florals, but I don't know. I don't think they have the seriousness that this time and what we're going through really warrants. So, but they are part of, they're part of my work, and they sell very well. So there you go for that. So.
Right, thank you. And our next question is going to come from Christine Green. And
yes, do you start with sketches, or do you approach the canvas directly and let your inspiration flow? How do you approach your work when you start?
Both ways. Sometimes I will do a sketch if I have something in my mind that I'm thinking about or processing. I will do a sketch. But oftentimes, like with the big abstract canvases, no sketches. It's very instinctive, very spontaneous, very immediate, and it has to flow. If it stops flowing, if it becomes contrived at all, it's done. I just leave it. I walk away. I'll come back in a day or a week or whenever and see if I can feel that fluidity again, or that true place for me where it's coming from. But I'll just show you a quick sketch and a finished product of one piece of an example of that. So this is a sketch that I did. I don't know if you can see it clearly but there is a mother and child there. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, and then this is a finished product. It's actually under the finished work. It's a painted work of that sketch.
Right.
So, but in general, I would say that no, I mean, I do have some sketches here about out and about, but in general, I like to work from my interior landscape, my photograph. That's what I called it, like a mental photograph.
Yeah.
Schery, did you want to tell everyone what the poem is that's on the floor?
Oh,
Would you like
sure.
to read it? I know I wasn't sure if you wanted to read it to everyone as well.
Yeah, I can read that, sure. And actually, it's a little bit of what at the end you'll feel maybe a sense of what we're going through now. Okay, here goes. I guess it is to go beyond the fringe where no fences lie, just a precipice or jagged cliff for the soul who likes the climb. I guess it is to go forward, traveling, gathering the earth we've crossed, remembering the scent of the soil, discarding the skin of dreams, and keeping tight and fast the vision of the stars in the blackness of the eyes. So that's the poem that's on the floor. People have tried to read it, but they can't get the whole thing.
Beautiful.
So I would like to just read one last poem of, I think I have it here. Oh yeah, okay, I do. It's called Lost and Found, and was written about those metal sculptures and for my grandson. And the name of the poem is For Every Purpose. A sparrow, I have to put my glasses on, sorry. A sparrow lands on the windowsill, restless, then flies away gone. So plain, so unremarkable, but somehow has mastered the earth and the sky. Scrap metal lays across the work table, ragged and rusted, busted and broken, discarded from somebody's home, waiting for new purpose, waiting for new hands. And a baby flies to earth. His howling wail splits open the thin-skinned secrets of the night, and brand new stars belonging only to him tumble from the sky and begin to dance. He is made of winter and spring and the cells of the sun, and the bearing quilt of his mother's love wraps him safe and warm. And the father, astounded in born-again light, hoists that baby into the air and cries, "This is my son, my mighty wee son." And together the mother and father sing their child into tomorrow. A sparrow lands on the windowsill, picks up a leaf and flies to the nest. And I sit with the broken metal, wonder where it came from, and wonder what my new hands will make. So that's about the sculptures that I do.
That's beautiful, and what a beautiful note to end on right now. There are no more questions. I want to thank you on behalf of Gallery North, Schery, for joining us today. Everyone, you can find Schery's work in the shop at Gallery North when we reopen. We have some of her watercolors in our shop, as well as cards, beautiful cards that she makes. I will also be linking in the comment section Schery's website, as well as Gallery North, where you can go if you'd like to see some of our other exhibitions or other virtual events that we have going on. And if you'd like to support events like this happening, you can also donate through our website to keep these events coming. Next week, our virtual artist encounters will feature Bruce Lieberman, who is another Long Island artist who's been in many shows at Gallery North and is a instructor at Stony Brook University. All right, thank you all so much for coming, and also for helping us deal with the lovely technical issues that come along with Zoom.
Right.
All right, thanks again, Schery.
Thank you.
Everyone, stay well. Thank you again for watching this episode of Gallery North's Virtual Artist Encounters. If you like events like this, please check out our website where you'll find a list of our upcoming programs and events. Please also consider becoming a member of Gallery North. We have a number of different levels and options to select from, with different benefits to fit your interests. Please also like and subscribe to us here on YouTube to get updates about our upcoming and published videos.